Hi, this is Brandon, the eldest of the Raspy Voice kids. We're here with Christopher Lambert, the dude of West Virginia on Twitter, and he is going to edify us as far as conference possibilities are concerned. So, with no further ado, I'm going to introduce Mr. Christopher Lambert. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me on, guys. I enjoy your show.
Well, we're grateful for that, and thank you for coming on, more than anything.
Well, I'm glad to do it. Always fun to talk realignment and expansion in the off season.
That's right.
96 days to kick off. We got to talk about something.
That's how I
Instead of
feel.
Will Greer. I love that Mountain Greer tag, by the way. That's A plus work there, guys.
My brother came up with that. He said Mountain Greer, and when he told me, I was like, man, that is perfect.
You selling the T-shirts yet?
We can talk about that another time. I'll tell you this though. So the way I became familiar with you and what you do is just on Twitter, and you started talking about conference realignment, grant of rights, ACC, Big 12, West Virginia, and I was just blown away with the amount of knowledge you had, the amount of intel it seemed, and so first, like, why are you a West Virginia fan? Like, how did that love even start?
Well, if you're a West Virginian, it's in your blood.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't really have a choice. I mean, that's why West Virginia is a little bit more popular than the state population would deem. I think they average like 1.2 million viewers in a state of 1.8 million population. So people have to raise their kids to be Mountaineer fans. I was actually born in Texas. I have my first love was Texas Longhorns and Earl Campbell. Then switched over to West Virginia when we moved back to the Mountain State and never looked back.
Well, we're glad that you made that choice.
Well, I am too.
So basically, the next question I want to ask is, how do you know so much about the intricacies of something as complicated as conference realignment?
Well, first of all, I'm not an insider. I'm consider myself a lay journalist, and I've worked for years, probably since 2009, making contacts and lots of research. And there's nothing easy about this. I mean, you've got to learned a lot of lessons, made a lot of mistakes. Everybody does. But the contacts I've made, for some reason, they've stayed loyal and stayed sharing information with me, and I've been able to trade information and sort of barter. Traditional journalists, they work in the field like Brett McMurphy and Chuck Carlton and Barry Trammell. They can only write about what's happened.
Oh, yeah.
They can't talk about things that are not sourced, or people are not willing to go on record, or people tell you things off the record. I can. When people don't, I'm not going to say people don't tell me stuff off the record, because they do, and I keep it off the record. But when they tell me stuff, it's stuff they want out, but they can't really get out. There's not a legitimate channel. A Brett McMurphy wouldn't write about it, or even Mike Casazza, who is wonderful.
Love Mike.
Wouldn't write about it. But we do not realize how lucky we are to have Mike Casazza as a beat writer. One of the best anywhere.
I'll tell you right now, I don't know him, but I know that he's great. He's been one of my favorite, if not my absolute favorite of all time covering WVU. I agree with you. I feel like he's an absolute gem.
Yeah, he is. Very, one of the best. I've been credentialed by WVU.
Okay.
I've been able to go in the press box. I have a fairly good relationship with WVU's athletic program. I can usually ask a question and get it answered and get a response. Most of the time it's off the record, but nothing's come easy. Nothing's from somebody told me. It's all been detective work.
Well, we're thankful that you did the digging.
Well,
so now
what I tell people is, we all love sports, and we love sports. And we think of them like we do fans, like we love the Mountaineers. We have an inflated sense of what the Mountaineer program is worth. I love West Virginia. I know what West Virginia is worth, and it's a valuable program. But we've got to stop thinking, in terms of realignment and expansion, you have to stop thinking of the sport and thinking of it as a business, an ongoing business concern. And there's so many factors that go into how valuable, a sports program is, like WVU's. And there are certain factors that are weighted for conferences that mean more than any, that affect the overall value. For instance, WVU has far more value to the SEC than just about anybody because of the history and the tradition of the program. Second to the SEC is probably the Big 12, and then the ACC, and the Big 10 and the Pac-12 wouldn't look WVU's way, I don't think, because of some reasons that.
Who wouldn't look our way?
Big 10 and Pac-12.
So why would the Big 10
Pac-12 because.
Well, go ahead.
Academics mostly. Academics and market.
For the Pac-12?
Academics and geography. That'd be a heck of a commute.
So you're saying for the Big 10, the reason because geographically we fit with the Big 10, especially with the addition of Maryland and the fact that there's Penn State. Morgantown's only 3 hours from Columbus, straight shot pretty much across 70. Well, from 79 to 70. But it's just, now, one thing I've learned, and you can tell me if this is true or not, all the schools in the Big 10, except for Nebraska, are AAU schools?
Yeah, American something. They are, and people have a.
And that's a research.
They don't really. It's not really. It's like a group of the top research universities in the country, and what it means is they receive the most federal money for research. But what does it really do for the Big Ten besides bragging rights? It doesn't. I mean, you just have to understand that college presidents have super big egos, and stuff like that matters to them. Like, I'll give you an example. Eric Barron, who was the president of Florida State University, is now the president of Penn State University. By all accounts, turned down the SEC twice because of academics.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. He felt that the ACC was superior academically, and he did not understand the impact the SEC membership would have had on FSU.
That seems very hard to believe, but I believe it because of what you said, the ego and the politics involved.
I think that's on the record. I think if you search that.
Well, no. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
I wasn't. Sorry, I was not trying to give the impression I didn't believe you. It's just you and I think of that as absolutely absurd. Like,
Well, we don't think like a college president, who is usually not hired outside the SEC for sports.
No. Is that a little veiled criticism?
No, I mean, the SEC model works.
So,
and I've been doing some research. Okay.
Who's got a bigger ego, a university president or Kanye West?
University president.
Oh, my goodness. All right.
Yes. And I know a college president personally who had an anonymous, he had departments fill out an anonymous survey about his performance.
Okay.
He fired everyone who gave him a bad. He really did. So that's.
I mean, that's not funny, but it's really funny.
Oh, it's true. It was true. I mean, it was shocking that he did that. No, college presidents have probably the biggest egos on the planet because they are they live in ivory towers and they forget the mission of their universities often. When the ACC used to have this thing against West Virginia about academics, and I was, who in the ACC serves their state as much as WVU does? I mean, it should be the mission of these other schools to help another university lift up its academic standards, but that rarely happens. FSU never partners with UNC or Duke on research activities. It's just association when they have their wine and cheese parties. But to get back to the SEC, recently I was told that if Notre Dame joins the ACC, And I had this verified a couple of people that West Virginia University is on the top of their list to join with him as number 16.
If Notre
And
Dame
John
joins,
Swafford.
if Notre Dame joins, then that means, by what you've heard, West Virginia would be at the top of the list to be the 16th team?
West Virginia is at the top of their list. That's
Oh.
been confirmed by multiple sources. Swafford yesterday said that if Notre Dame joins, they would add a 16th team. So I started researching. The common belief is that West Virginia would never get into the ACC because, UNC and Duke and UVA. And, that was true when it took 2 votes to get them out. But now that would take 4 votes and, blackball them. And UNC doesn't have the sway over the conference that they used to have.
Did something happen
But I found, yeah. Yeah, there's. But I went back and I was looking at the breakup of the Big East, and went even further back to the formation of the Big East in 1994. And in 1994, 4 schools in the Big East who were, I think it was Boston College, Syracuse, Pitt, and there's one other, threatened the Big East that they were going to leave, and they were going to form an all-sports conference and add West Virginia, Virginia Tech, Temple, and there was a 4th. West Virginia, Virginia Tech, Temple, and there was another one. I forget who it was. But the Big East decided they would add West Virginia and Rutgers was the 4th one, and not add the other 2. But if they would have refused, those 8 schools already had a deal with CBS worked out to broadcast their basketball and football games starting in 1996. We paid each school about $8.5 million apiece. That's the contract that went to the SEC that made the SEC so big.
Oh.
That SEC Game of the Week on CBS.
Yeah. So we missed the boat.
Missed the boat. Get this too, and this is on the record. If you look, the reason the Big East decided to add West Virginia was the SEC wanted to add West Virginia.
Oh my!
So in 1994,
you're telling me we could be in the SEC already right now?
No one at WVU will confirm this. So this is just
conjecture,
a highly probable hypothesis. In 1994, West Virginia University likely turned down an invitation to the SEC to stay with Pitt and Virginia Tech, Syracuse, and the Big East. But the SEC wasn't the SEC back then.
Yeah, you're right.
The SEC was only made the SEC by that contract with CBS. So I'm told that those 4 schools, who are now all in the ACC, would vote for West Virginia in the ACC. I'm also told that Virginia Tech, who was added to the Big East mostly because of Ed Pastelong and WVU support, would support WVU, especially with Babcock. It was Jim Clements at Clemson, with Jimbo Fisher at FSU. The only schools that I have question about whether they would support WVU are UNC, Duke, and North Carolina. North Carolina, Duke, and Wake Forest, North Carolina schools.
All on academic reasons?
All on academic reasons.
All right, so you basically have, 2 of the questions I had was, geographically we fit in the Big Ten, we fit in the ACC, why aren't we accepted? And what you're saying is the Big Ten, it's all academic, AAU designation, and then for the ACC, again, it's academic with that hinging mostly on 3 schools, Wake Forest, North Carolina, and Duke. But
I don't think the ACC academic argument holds water since they added Louisville.
Yeah.
ESPN is paying them at least $45 million a year for the ACC network. If ESPN wants West Virginia in the ACC is going to add West Virginia.
So here's a question I have for you. When we moved to the Big 12, why didn't the Big 12 take WVU and Louisville at the same time?
Texas and Oklahoma couldn't agree.
But what was the disagreement?
Well, if you add 11, revenue sharing for one thing. if you cut that slice of pie, the Big 12 is already being played for 12 teams. A lot of people don't realize that. I mean, they're getting paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, they're significantly paid more than the ACC and the Pac-12. So if you add an 11th team, you divide that pie, the pie gets smaller. If you add 11 to balance out divisions, you have to add another. So who are you going to add?
The thing for me though is the question now is the Big 12 a legitimate conference? Are they a strong conference? And I felt like at the time, understanding the revenue would have dropped because you're adding another person at the table to eat the same pie. It felt to me like you add 2 schools to solidify yourself competitively, and then you can figure out the revenue later because you have a stronger bargaining position.
The Big 12 added the 2 best football programs available on the advice of ESPN. They added the 2 programs available to deliver the most TV ratings because ESPN sells ads.
Yes.
And ad rates are based on TV ratings.
No, that makes sense. What you're saying makes complete sense. I'm just, again, as you have mentioned already, I view this from a fan's perspective and not enough from the business side of it.
Well, when you think about realignment and expansion, the only thing that you can think of is the business decisions. Because they're not going to add the schools. Well, there's some caveats to that. They're not going to add a school to keep revenues the same or see a reduction of revenues. They add a school, they want to see more money. The ACC would add WVU because it would make ESPN money to add WVU, and it would balance out the divisions. Who else are they going to add? I mean, if WVU can't get out of the grant of rights, they'll add UConn, but UConn's not going to deliver ad rates. UConn won't deliver the New York market because they already have Syracuse. They can't charge double carriage fees. And carriage fees are what your cable company charges you to carry the network, regardless of whether you watch it or not. So, like if it's in the Tier 1 package, if you subscribe to cable, you get the Tier 1 package. You're going to pay like 99 cents or $1.35 for the SEC network, no matter what, if you watch it or not. You get more money if you're in market. If there's a team that's in the conference within that market, and less if you're out of market. But you can't charge twice.
Yeah. And I heard you explain.
And the football schools in the ACC have the power now. Clemson and Florida State. And thankfully for WVU.
And they should have the power.
Well, they do. Clemson and Florida State are responsible for probably 80% of the ACC's revenues in football.
Yeah,
those 2 programs.
No, it makes complete sense, and they should be the most successful, not just on the field, but as you just mentioned, as far as revenue is concerned, and then with money comes power. So it just makes makes total sense.
I love the Big 12. You hear a lot of people talking about how unstable the Big 12 is. The Big 12 isn't unstable. It's making a lot of money. Texas and Oklahoma are always going to be top 10 in revenues. If more than 35% of your program's revenues comes from your TV contract, your program's in trouble. Texas and Oklahoma are pretty much immune to that. As long as they have an easy path to the playoffs, as long as they control the conference like they do, as long as they're in the neighborhood, they know they're not going to make as much money as the Big Ten or SEC. As long as they're third, they're happy. What David Boren, who's president of Oklahoma, is doing is a lot of Big 12 fans have conference envy. These Big Ten fans, and it's always the fans of programs like Minnesota and Illinois who brag. We're in the Big Ten. We make more money than anybody else.
Yeah.
Well, I had this guy on Twitter try to argue me that Northwestern made more money than WVU. They don't. Northwestern runs a deficit. So, they're the ones who push, but a lot of Big 12 fans, especially Oklahoma, they have this inferiority complex. And that, believe it or not, affects donations, it affects boosters, alumni. So David Boren's a consummate politician. And don't ever forget that he was a politician. So he panders to his audience, knowing full well that Oklahoma has it the best of worlds in the Big 12 right now. If Oklahoma went to the Big 10, they would have a recruiting problem. Because their state population is small.
Yeah.
If they went to the SEC, they would have an Alabama, an LSU, an Auburn, a Georgia, a Tennessee problem.
I'll never forget. His name was Harvey Updike from
Yes.
the Auburn fan, or the Alabama fan who killed
Toomer's
those.
Corner.
Yeah, he went to Toomer's Corner. He went to Toomer's Corner and he took that pesticide and killed those trees. And do you remember how they caught him?
He bragged about it, didn't he?
He called into Paul Feinbaum.
Yeah. That's what he did.
And he thought that everyone was going to love him for it, and even Alabama fans were like, "Man, that's too far." And he got he got charged and tried for it too.
Well, yeah, I know. He got probation or something. SEC's crazy. I mean, West Virginia is by culture an SEC team.
Yes.
We are that crazy. And ask Virginia Tech. They'll tell you.
Yep.
About how crazy WVU fans are. But I think I have concerns about WVU and the SEC. A lot of people I talk to don't share those concerns. I don't think West Virginia University has the resources to match the Georgia, Tennessee. They'd certainly be in the SEC East. A lot of people disagree with me. They say that West Virginia, as the northeasternmost team in the SEC, would clean up in recruiting.
I think so too. Personally, not only do I think they'd clean up in recruiting, I think we match up very well with Kentucky, with Vanderbilt, with Missouri, and
well, I hear you, but I want to put one thought in your head. If God above wants to compete with Alabama for a recruit, they better upgrade. God better start upgrading these facilities.
Hey, you're right, but we have the same issue with Texas. I mean, you saw the lockers that they just put in down there, right?
Right, yeah, but Texas only recruits Texas. And you know what they say about Texas recruits is by the time they're out of high school, they're as fully developed as they're going to be.
Oh.
What you get as a college freshman is what you get. Whereas WVU recruits these kids that might be 3 stars, but they've got room to grow.
Yes.
It's like, finding the girlfriend in junior high who's not attractive now, but you recognize that she has, good bone structure. And you wait for her to get contacts and her braces off.
Yeah.
That's what WVU does.
My brother, he went to school with this kid, and there's some girl in their 7th grade class that by the time they got to 9th grade, she was beautiful in their opinion, for 15-year-old kids.
Yeah.
And they would always sing that Cher song, "If I Could Turn Back Time."
Well, you look at the kids WVU's putting the pros,
Yeah.
and look at the recruiting, how they come in.
Well, I'm sure there's plenty of coaches singing that when they see the guys we get. Ralph Regent with Steve Slayton is the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, well, Pat White and Auburn, they wanted him to play defensive back.
Yeah.
Owen Schmidt was turned down at Maryland too.
Yep.
We always get these kids that are tweeners. They're not big enough for this, or they're too small for that, and we make them what they are. West Virginia has the best defensive coordinator in the Big 12,
Mm-hmm.
probably one of the best in the country, and Tony Gibson. The kids will just play lights out for him.
And he probably.
But I want to wrap up this expansion stuff and give a pretty what I think is going on. Nothing in the Big 12 right now. I think if the Big 12 does anything, I don't think Texas and Oklahoma are going to leave. I think they will either poach from the Pac-12 or they will merge with the Pac-12.
Really?
Yes, I do.
So that would put that.
A lot of people think that.
That would be what, a 24-team conference?
No, they would. I'm assuming West Virginia would go to the ACC and they would leave Baylor behind.
Oh.
So they would have 2 8-team divisions.
So what you're saying is you're not talking about the Big 12 staying intact. You're saying the Big 12 will merge with the Pac-12, but they will do that without West Virginia, who will have already made their move.
If Notre Dame joins the ACC,
what are the chances of that?
It has to happen. If Notre Dame doesn't want to be marginalized, they make about $15 million a year from their contract with NBC. That's going to be a quarter of what ACC is going to make from both. If the ACC tells West Virginia they're interested, with West Virginia's relationships with, those schools, Pitt, Virginia Tech, even Syracuse, Louisville, West Virginia helped Louisville get into the Big East. with Jim Clements at Clemson. West Virginia has to make that move.
So, in your opinion, then, where is the ideal place for WVU? Geography, financially, academically, culturally, as far as a fan base. If the dude of West Virginia is picking, where does WVU land?
Without a question, West Virginia is an SEC team.
Okay.
I think West Virginia as a program would be more successful in the ACC.
Okay. So what are you saying then? What's your choice?
I think if this is just my opinion, I talked to a lot of people, and like I said, they're split down the middle. I think if West Virginia had an offer from the SEC and ACC both,
Yeah.
they would take the ACC offer.
What would you do?
I would take the ACC offer.
Okay.
Because you're playing Virginia Tech, you're playing Pitt, you're playing Syracuse, you're playing UVA, you're playing North Carolina, you're playing North Carolina State.
Louisville.
You have a stronger basketball conference, tougher basketball recruiting.
Yeah, no, that's excellent.
You get to go back to New York for Syracuse, in the the ACC tournament, occasionally. They are more like institutions in the ACC. Culturally, no question, WVU is in the SEC school. And a lot of people, including my friend Brett McMurphy, who will swear that WVU didn't have an offer, West Virginia had a conditional offer from the SEC last go-around if Missouri had turned him down, and it wasn't certain that Missouri would go with the SEC. If you know anything about it, it was Missouri's president and athletic director who arranged for the Big 12 to stay together.
Oh, you know what?
Who arranged for equal revenue sharing for the Big 12, which was a first.
Now that you say that, I think I remember when that was happening.
Well, there are people in the Mountaineer program who thought when it was announced that the Big 12 would sign a grant of rights, that they had it. I mean, the rule is you don't submit paperwork to a conference to get turned down.
You already know. You've already had those discussions.
You've already had that discussions. You've already had that due diligence.
It's like asking a woman to marry you. You don't do it unless you know.
Yeah, that was the big riddle for me, is what happened between WVU and the SEC. And it took me 3 years to find out what I think really happened.
What is that?
It was simple. The SEC did not like West Virginia's facilities. They were not certain that West Virginia University could count on the state for help.
Oh.
That LSU game, if you were at the LSU game.
I was.
And you remember the concourse?
Yeah.
You could not walk. It was packed.
Yeah, you're right.
They didn't have enough bathrooms. They didn't have enough concessions. The SEC went back and said West Virginia cannot handle, the type of crowds that they would get being in the SEC. And West Virginia University could not tell them how they would renovate those facilities.
That's frustrating.
So they took the ESPNs. A lot of people in the SEC didn't want Missouri. I mean, there's an article recently in the Tennessee newspaper saying the SEC should have taken West Virginia instead of Missouri.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're talking about as far as athletics are concerned, that's a no-brainer.
Right.
If you want to talk about journalism school, okay, give it to Missouri, but that's not what we're talking about. So.
Well, culture means a lot to the SEC. You had basically, a lot of people don't remember this, but Alabama and LSU sort of stopped the vote on Missouri for West Virginia.
I did not know that.
It's a Google. I think that's another. It's on the record, but backhanded. If you Google Saban and Manchin and the SEC, it will talk about how Saban lobbied on behalf of WVU, and then you have to look at how LSU and Alabama delayed the vote because they didn't want to be split up. Because Missouri would have naturally went into the West, and they wanted an Eastern team, WVU. Those renovations that the SEC wanted, the minute WVU was in the Big 12, they took Big 12 money and used that to finance those renovations.
I know. That's what I was going to say. They did it. Everything they wanted, we did.
Almost. It's almost finished.
No, I love that. And That's why I love Oliver Luck. That's why I so far feel good about what Shane Lyons has done. And I really love, I mean, Bobby Huggins, I don't even have to say it. If you live in the Mountain State, you know, Bobby Huggins could be your uncle, you know, or your grandpa, depending on how old you are.
He's everybody's grandpa. Yeah. He's it.
So,
well, the other thing that people forget is that Dr. Gee's a superstar. That little man.
Yes.
That little man has plans.
And he fundraises with the best of them.
He does. And he hired Shane Lyons when he had, Rich Mullins, and Whit Babcock as candidates. He could have hired either one of those to replace Oliver Luck. He hired the guy who has the close ties to both the SEC and the ACC.
Oh, yes. Because
Shane Lyons.
He's from Alabama. He was working at Alabama when he came to us.
He was running the Alabama. I think Mel Moore was ill a lot. It was Shane Lyons who made all the decisions.
And he did okay down there.
He did okay down there. So,
and he's a Parkersburg guy.
Yep.
So I mean,
and Gee picked the guy with close ties to both, SEC and ACC. And a lot of people don't know this about Jim Clements. I'm sorry to go a little bit longer.
No, this is
Clements
good.
Still comes to Mountaineer football and basketball games.
Now tell the people who Jim Clements is. I know, but tell them.
He was the former president of WVU who hired Oliver Luck and let Luck do all the work to get WVU out of the. We hired Oliver Luck with the mandate get rid of Bill Stewart. That's another topic. And get WVU out of the Big East.
Yeah, no, we'll talk about that another time. We say that a lot on the show. We'll talk about that another time. I want to have you back on because I've got some Rich Rodriguez questions too. But go ahead.
Don't get me started there. I was the most anti-Rich person in the world. Rich was railroaded.
Oh, well, you know what? You know what? That's a good place to end this conversation. We will talk about that another time. But right now, what I need you to answer for me.
Okay.
Very important question on a lot of people's minds. What is the best Pop-Tart?
Oh, my God. That's a question?
That's a question.
That's a question? Strawberry or cherry? Either one of those.
You had it right at strawberry. Strawberry.
Well, it just depends on the day. Sometimes you feel like strawberry. Sometimes you feel like cherry. You don't want to go to that chocolate stuff.
No, thank you.
You know what you want to do? The people who buy those Pop-Tarts who are not frosted, those are the people you don't want as friends.
I don't trust those people.
You can't trust those people. Who would eat a Pop-Tart without frosting?
I have a friend. You heard my brother. He suggested you have a brown sugar, no frosting, toasted with butter. And I told him that was disgusting, as you are now saying yourself.
Oh, there's something wrong with your brother then.
And my best friend always says that he does not trust people who don't like beer or coffee. He's like,
I don't like either.
He said it's okay to not like one, but see now, Chris, you're scaring me now because he told me not to trust you.
Well, I'm addicted to Coca-Cola. See, that's the thing.
So then I won't ask you my next
Atlanta
question.
3 times a day.
My next question would be Pepsi versus Coke, but you already answered that.
Coke is it, man. Coke. I mean, it used to have cocaine.
I know. But
Beat that.
That was in the past.
Or is it? And the recipe's still secret.
It is a secret formula, right? So
that's right.
All right, 2 more questions.
Okay.
The best fast food French fries.
The potato patch fries at Kennywood Park.
That's not fast food. Kenwood Park. Shout out to Kenwood. But that's not fast food. I'm asking fast food.
It has to be Tudor's Biscuit World because I'm a loyal West Virginian.
Oh, see, listen to that. This guy. You are up there with Herd Hater, who's going to run for governor, man.
Well, we need a good governor.
All right, we'll leave that one. So the third question I'm going to ask you, Toy Story or Lion King?
Lion King. Has to be Lion King. I'm an animal guy.
I feel like that's sentiment, but I'll give it to you because you're a guest.
There's nothing beats that story of Rich Rod, talking about the only movie he's ever seen is Lion King.
I've never heard that story.
Hakuna Matata. Remember that?
I've never heard that story. But what I want, though, is I'm going to have you back on, and we can talk about it later.
Anytime. Yeah, the Rich story is fairly interesting because it goes back to the IMG West Virginia Metro News battle, and Eddie passed along, and Mike Parsons, and I got a lot of information on that for you.
That's why I want you back on. We're going to do a whole show about Rich Rodriguez, and you sound like the guy to come on with us.
Rich should have done what Bobby Huggins did when Parsons and Pastor Long told him no about the basketball practice facility.
What happened?
Bobby said, "Screw you guys, I'll go raise the money myself."
Oh, that's right, and he did.
He did.
Man, you're right. But Bobby Huggins is Bobby Huggins.
Well, Rich had some. He listened to some people who didn't have his best interests at heart. But he was.
Let's save this because you have. Yeah. Let's save this. We're gonna do a whole show. I mean, as long as you're amenable to it, we're gonna have you on very soon because we already have it planned out.
Well, talk to me after this. I want to tell you something real important about that.
Okay, good. So you guys are just gonna have to wait. I'm gonna get some insider information. You guys are gonna have to wait. But rest assured, it's coming. The Dude of West Virginia, I want to thank you for being here with the Raspy Voice Kids.
My pleasure, guys.
And we'll talk to you very soon. Follow him on Twitter. You want to tell me your Twitter handle? Twitter handle.
I think it's at the Dude of West Virginia.
Very simple.
I think.
Yeah. I'll tell you for sure because I have it right here.
Let's go Mountaineers, yeah.
And let's go drink some beers.
That's right.
Yeah, he's at the Dude of WV. All one word, at the Dude of WV. No underscores or anything. Follow him. Just for his avatar, which you can see displayed here. Yeah, he's golden, man. He knows what he's talking about. He's here to edify the people. He's here to make it better for Mountaineer Nation. And we thank you again for the time you spent with us.
Thank you, guys.